I've been learning and teaching people Chinese for over 10 years, and there are many things I've learned that significantly accelerated my progress and the progress of thousands of our members. But there's one skill that I learned that made Chinese 10 times easier. I spent my first year and over 1,000 hours making almost zero progress with the language. I doubted my ability to even learn languages at all at one point, but once I learned this skill, not only was my self-confidence totally transformed, I went on to speak fluently and pass the highest level Chinese exam in a fraction of the average time just a year later, all while working part-time just a couple of hours a day. I then went on to develop an entire course around teaching this skill with my business partner, and now we've helped many people have breakthroughs with Chinese as a result. And the skill I learned was reading. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly why learning to read is so important, and I'll share the exact system our members use to go from zero to reading native Chinese content in record time. Oh, and if you'd like us to guide you further, just click the link in the description to join our free course and community and learn everything that I'm going to talk about step by step. So first off, let me just start by saying that you can become fluent in Chinese or any language without learning how to read. Chinese children do it every day, right? Fluency is simply being able to use a few thousand words well. And to do that, you need to, number one, learn the words. Number two, practice hearing and using the words a lot in context of sentences. Now, listen and repeat programs like Pimsleur, Assimil, Glossika, they do this without teaching reading. And I actually quite like these programs. They're a good way to start learning any language. Listening and repeating is really important, crucial for developing good pronunciation and spoken fluency. And if you supercharge the process by using memory techniques like the ones that we teach, you can learn like 100 words a day if you wanted to, purely based on the Pinyin pronunciation. No characters necessary. So for example, the word milk in Chinese is 牛奶. You could use a mnemonic such as Neale from The Matrix pouring milk onto his knee. His knee sounds like nai, right? Neo, ni, neo, nai. Silly, yes. Highly effective, also yes. And very fast. You could learn a couple of thousand common words like this by using mnemonics and then start repeating lots of example sentences, and you could reach a decent level of fluency that way. So why bother learning Chinese characters at all then? Well, if you don't learn to read Chinese, you're going to begin to encounter all kinds of problems once you get to an intermediate level that makes the language harder as time goes on. Learning characters, on the other hand, is slower in the beginning, but progress becomes faster and easier as time goes on. So the first major issue you'll face if you don't learn to read will be something called homophones, right? Chinese only has 400 or so different sounding syllables, as you can see here. 1,200 or so if you include the tones. And compared to the thousands upon thousands of different syllables in the English language, that's actually a tiny amount. So this creates lots of words that sound similar or exactly the same, but mean something very different. Just like the word red, the color, versus read, the past tense of read. There aren't many of these in English, but there are tons in Chinese. So for example, the sound shi, for example, could be many different characters, have many different meanings, that exact sound. Shi is to be, or shi is room, which is, funny enough, also sometimes pronounced shi with a third tone. Shi could be matter or affair. It could also be to look at. It could be city or market. It could be to try something. And this is all just the fourth tone. Then that if you add in first tone shi or second tone shi, there's a bunch more meanings that it could have. Third tone shi could mean feces. So these are individual characters, but it also works the same with Chinese words made up of multiple characters, which most words are. So for example, 及时 is even though, and 及时 is market. Very, very similar. 时间 is time, and 实践 is practice. Just one tone difference, and all these are pretty common words. So basically the language starts to sound very, very similar the more you learn, and it's very difficult to discern between different words based on sound alone. Now, if you learn the characters, on the other hand, you'll develop a unique visual understanding of the unique meaning of each one, and you get to take advantage of the inherent kind of beautiful logic within Chinese vocabulary. Let me show you what I mean. So the vast majority of Chinese words are two-character compound words, and they almost all have a very logical arrangement of characters. So logical, in fact, it's almost like a built-in mnemonic device for every word you learn. So let's go back to the examples from earlier. 及时 is made up of 及, which means to gather or to collect. And then 市 means market, or it could also mean city. And so you could say, okay, it's a market is where people gather in a city, which is kind of true, right? And so it naturally makes sense. So this character here, 时, is like the classic definition of time, and it's also used to mean when, like when did something happen at a specific time. And 间 is more like an interval of time. It's very clear that these two characters together would mean the final meaning of time, right? And when you learn to read Chinese, you'll see the language on a whole new level. You'll start to see these patterns among words that share the same characters, so you can learn words exponentially faster. For example, here, 火车, 火山, 火灾, they're all fire. 火 is fire, so it's fire vehicle. Fire mountain is volcano. Fire disaster, fire incident. 手表, 手术, 手机, they're all related to the hand character. So hand watch is wristwatch. Hand technique is surgery. Hand machine, cell phone. 电视, 电池, 电话. Again, these are all electricity. Electric vision, electric pool, electric speech. The definitions of these all make sense. Now, these are all nouns, but this can also be applied to adjectives and verbs as well. So when you learn characters, you get to enjoy these patterns and take advantage of them and infer new meanings from new words, making words exponentially easier and faster to learn. So instead of hearing that 牛奶 from earlier, neo ni, you could actually see it as cow milk, which is what the two characters mean. And then later on, you can infer the meaning of 羊奶, which is goat milk, or 酸奶, sour milk, which is the word for yogurt. So this all makes not only learning the words easier because you can think of easier mnemonics to create, but also remembering the words is way easier because there are more visual, emotional, conceptual connections you'll make to each new word you're learning. So the more connections you have to new information, the easier it is to remember it, right? So learning based on Pinyin alone is bit more shallow and not as connection rich, so it's kind of easier to forget. Now, all this is not such a huge deal when you're a beginner starting out with a language where learning just 10 words will make such a huge difference to your level. But as you start to develop, say, a vocabulary of more than 1,000 or so words, and you want to start increasing your level of fluency without reading, the speed at which you will learn new words and the difficulty of retaining them will become a growing problem. You'll hit this ceiling where progress will become slower and slower, and advancing from basic fluency to the higher levels would just kind of be a nightmare. And when you learn characters, every new character and word you learn becomes part of this interconnected web of meaning that reinforces itself. And without characters, you get no exponential gains and basically start from scratch with every new word. It's kind of like trying to build a house with hand tools. Now, aside from the fact that without characters, you are functionally illiterate, and that's embarrassing and that sucks, here's another huge reason why you definitely should learn characters. It grants you access to more advanced and more engaging Chinese content. So when you can read Chinese, you can access, of course, books and comics, which are very fun. But more importantly, you'll be able to access content you wouldn't otherwise understand or be able to really enjoy. You'll be able to use subtitles to access and enjoy podcasts using transcripts, and you'll be able to understand TV shows and movies using subtitles that you wouldn't otherwise be able to understand. It's like the subtitles will make the listening easier, and the listening makes the reading of the subtitles easier. I'll never forget my own experience of this when I had my breakthrough moment with reading and immersion. So after learning a few thousand characters, I sat down at my apartment and watched a Chinese TV show for the first time, and I could follow along with what was happening. Wherever I couldn't understand, I just looked at the subtitles and I could read them, and I could understand most of what was happening. Now, could this have happened through listening alone? Maybe, but it would have taken months or even years of intensive listening practice. Learning words through Pinyin only again would have been slower and harder to retain. Reading gave me a shortcut. Now, listening is crucial, of course, but you'll be able to get incredible gains if you learn how to read because of the visual element. And when you're listening to Chinese, you might know every single word in a sentence and still not understand it because of the speed and pronunciation, right? But with reading, you can take your time and process each character and word at your own pace. In fact, when listening or trying to shadow, as in repeat along with the audio. It's so helpful to have written text in front of you while doing it. This is a great way of starting off with shadowing, which is a tough activity to do as a lower level. So, with all that said, I think I've made it pretty clear now that reading is awesome and not reading is not awesome. But what may be on your mind is the rather intimidating idea of learning thousands of characters. Well, I'll prove to you right now that it's not anywhere near as big a task as you might imagine. So, first off, you don't actually have to learn that many characters. You've heard of the 80-20 rule, right? The Pareto principle, where 20% of the effort yields 80% of the results in almost everything. Well, with Chinese characters, it's more like 97-3, where just 3% of your effort can give you 97% of the results you need. Check out this graph. It shows something incredible about Chinese characters. Just 100 characters, about 3% of what educated native know, gives you about 40% comprehension of everything you see. With this, you can read hundreds of simple sentences. 500 characters gets you to roughly 75 to 80% comprehension. At this level, you can handle most graded readers and start to follow even some children's TV shows with subtitles. 1,000 characters gets you to 90% comprehension. So now you can read simple articles, have meaningful text conversations. And at 3,000 characters, that's 99.4% of everything you'll ever need to read. At this point, you'll have the foundation you need to read novels, newspapers, and access virtually any content with enough vocabulary and practice, of course. Now, the other piece of good news for you regarding characters is that learning them is not this horrendously soul-destroying process of writing them over and over and over again until your hand cramps, at least not anymore. We've got a method that we've been using for years that makes it possible for anyone to learn any Chinese character, including how to read it, write it, and pronounce it with the correct tone in literally seconds using the power of memory palaces. You can click the link in the description to access our course and community as well as our weekly Q&As, and we'll guide you step by step through the first few hundred characters and words for free. Or if you'd like a condensed version, you can watch this video right here where I walk you through the entire methodology and teach you how to read basic Chinese from zero in one video.